A very good evening to you all, and welcome to Frank on Camnet on a Tuesday, wherever you are, all over the world, including Zambia. The biggest event happened on the 12th of August. The 2021 elections. Elections that were well attended, well received. In the end, ushered in the UPND government. My guest on the show this evening is Dr. Nevers Mumba, who is the president of New Hope MMD. Good evening and welcome.
Frank, good evening and thank you for having me, and to our viewers, I look forward to this interview.
You look great. You look in good shape. This after one of the most grueling elections.
Yes, Frank, first of all, you must understand who you are. You got to be comfortable with what you believe God has placed in your life. If you do that, you can go through any season or any fire, come out on the other side still smiling, because your value is not touched. Because the value is placed in you by God. There are certain people that when they go through a gruesome moment like we did, they'll be on their faces for many months, if not years. But I think that we are all in this process of elections and politics to do good on behalf of the Zambian people, but more importantly, on behalf of God. Because if you realize that He never promised that it would be an easy road. God never said that, your life will be a straight line. I would actually hate it to be a straight line, because I would like to experience life for what it is. And I think that I've had an opportunity to face life in its raw form. But I'm grateful to God that I'm still here.
What does it take to develop this amazing relationship with God? I say this because even strong Christians can be overstretched. Even Jesus cried out to his Father.
Yes, it is. First of all, you must understand that even in our salvation, having given our lives to God, God does not protect us from all the elements of life. Just like your own children, Frank. You allow them to experience life, because it's life that strengthens them to be what they are. But I think that the values inculcated in your life as a result of knowing God personally, not as a religious activity, gives you the assurance of who you are. The difficulty about elections, as they are known in terms of democracy, is that if you are not careful, you can be characterized by numbers. Like if you get 0 and people start to laugh at you and call you Mr. Zero, you have to be very careful to understand that basically you are not a 0. You may be a 0 today, but you're going to be 1,000 tomorrow, depending on the circumstances, the season, and what God wants to achieve at that particular point. The reason why a lot of people fall into this trap is that they are shaped and named by their temporal setbacks, and they think that that's who they are, and they'll never move away from there. Now that you have asked that question, I'm reminded of a discussion that I had now with the current president of Zambia, President Hakainde Hichilema. You remember in 2016, I worked with him very closely in that election, and we're going around the country, we'll be in a chopper, we'll be somewhere, and after the election of 2016, and we apparently, according to ECZ, lost, we were in a discussion, and he said to me, my brother, the only problem I have is that I don't give up. It does not matter what happens, I'll remain focused. So I learned that probably there was something deeper in him that made him not call himself a failure. People went out there and called him Kalusa, Hakalusa, and they called him all the names based on the times that he had lost. But that's not what defines your future. And Zambians must understand that. And Christians must understand that. I do understand that. That's why I have a smile on my face. That's why I have hope in my heart. That's why I have still a fight within me. And that's why I still believe in Zambia, that regardless of what Zambia goes through, there is a better place that we can take this country to.
Since you talked about the current president, and his resilience, which is similar to your resilience. Both of you, in your own right, you could have given up politics. You could have gone back to the pulpit, of which you still do, but you could have given up politics completely. You could have given up politics and enjoy the hard-earned, wealth. What is that resilience that keeps you going and say, you know what? I want this thing, not just for me, but for others.
I think there are a lot of people that are involved in enterprises or projects in which they do not have a vision. What really keeps me going is the vision that I carry in my heart. Look, I have no doubt that what I talk about, I believe in it. I have no doubt that there's an investment of and a wealth of information, a wealth of character, a wealth of direction in my life that I can offer my nation. I have not yet found the path to deliver that. It's like you have the goods, but you have to find the goods train that moves your goods to the final destination. Over the past number of years, I have had no doubt as to the fact that if today I was given the opportunity to guide this nation, I know exactly where to start. I would not be fumbling. So in terms of readiness, I am. But now we have to make sure we create the path that gets us there, which is a totally different process as well. And therefore, once God has prepared you, and the path becomes slippery, and you have to make sure that you stay on a certain path to get there, that in itself cannot be used against you, that you are not important, that you are not going anywhere. It's a question of, let me find the path and deliver the goods that I carry to the Zambian people and for my generation.
The church is not a large enough constituency, Dr. Mumba. Don't you have any conflicts once in a while with God, where God is saying, look, my son, I think for now this constituency is large enough for you to use as a path that you're talking about?
Well, I hope I'll answer your question accurately. I don't know the question you've asked, but the church, I hope we can later on come back to the church when we talk about the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation. But I think that when you're dealing with governance, first of all, what I've learned is that just deal with the Zambian people. The people in the church are just Zambians. Zambians who go to the same shops, Zambians who struggle to get a job, Zambians who are failing to take their children to school, they're still in our churches. So I've come to realize that a lot of church people do not vote or decide to choose a leader on the basis of their values. They just do it because that's what the politics is dictating at that particular time. There could be a few Christians who take these issues of morality, integrity extremely seriously, but it's not everybody. So for me, I have faith in the fact that when the season comes, it doesn't matter whether it's the church or the non-believers or even Satanists. When your season comes, it has come. They shall rally around you to give it to you. So I look at life that way. That's why I said that I may not have understood your question, but I thought that, so for me, I do understand that life is about seasons. All the times that President Hakainde was losing elections, those did not fall to him as his season. Now his season has come. Nobody can stop it. In God's timing, when my season comes, even those who have never voted for me, at that time, because the season is right, it has to happen.
This is amazing. Why do you think this was President Hakainde Hichilema's season, stacked against all odds, right? I want you to listen to me very carefully. Stacked against all odds. The media, PF, the man was verified as a tribalist, okay? That's one side of the story. The second side is I can't take away from the players in these elections that there were some amazing people. I mean, I don't want to name names, 3, 4, really morally upright when you look at them and you say, you know what? Yeah. These are really, really, you know, close God's children, for lack of a better way of putting it. Can you answer that?
Yeah, I can attempt.
Yeah.
Frank, let's understand the nature of this just ended election. And I think any Zambian who fails to understand what happened on the 12th will have difficulties in interpreting where we are going. And more seriously, if the United Party for National Development or President Hakainde does not interpret this victory correctly, they might misapply their vision as they move forward. Look, the Zambians came to a place where they were totally convinced that the Patriotic Front was no longer serving the interest of this country. The Zambian people collectively, by and large, decided that the Patriotic Front was leading the country not only towards distress, but towards economic collapse and towards a dissolution of unity. And we might end up with a country that does not really give the energy for people to be productive and eventually become prosperous. So Zambians decided Patriotic Front is gone. We can no longer have it. Now, at that particular time, they have to look around. What weapon are we going to use to execute our already made-up mind? When they looked towards us in the opposition, they found the UPND properly positioned, ready with their weapon sharp enough to be used to be able to cut down the Patriotic Front. And almost in unison, Zambians at that time forgot that some of us that stood even existed. It had nothing to do with whether Nevas Mumba is a moral leader or is capable of governing this country. It was no longer that. It was a question of who can execute this on our behalf without taking any chances. So at that particular point, our colleagues were chosen. And therefore, it doesn't matter what my message was. It doesn't matter what Calabar's message was. It doesn't matter what Member's message was. It doesn't matter what Sean's message was. That was totally irrelevant. It was not about messages. It was about removing the Patriotic Front so that people can have the space of their freedom back. Now, you talked about the odds that were stacked against all of us, not just President Hakainde. The police were working against us. We were being tear gassed on every front. We had no space to campaign. We had no access to the media like ZNBC. We were totally closed out. That in itself, when I visited the Copper Belt and I entered the city, and I saw that it was all at that point, I convinced myself PF is losing. I had never seen such levels of desperation. Any opposition poster, billboard was torn down. Now that comes from a place of desperation, wanting to be the only star in town. Now the Zambian I said, you know what? We are not going to go in this direction again. So I think even what the PF used against us was literally, used against them. And therefore, it gave the energy to the Zambian people to say, okay, then time has come for these selfish people to get out of the way so that we can give democracy a chance. To me, I think what PF did worked against them. And I did say this to them. But look, I am leader of MMD. And in 2011, although I was not here, I was a High Commissioner in Canada, but we were following the campaign here. We had more money than the PF claimed to have this time. We had more vehicles, we had more banners, we had more billboards, we had everything needed to campaign. But we still lost because it's not the money that gives you the victory all the time. Yes, in your season it works to, for you, but the season money you throw out there. That the PF made a lot of fun of the Zambians. they did certain things that made Zambians feel that these are not the ones. And I think that if I was PF and I'm alive today, how do you get yourself out of this mess? This is your country as PF. You have to live with us in this country. But you injured a lot of us, a lot of Zambians. It is the best time for you to turn around and you say, you know what? I do apologize for one or two things that I did, for having made life so complicated for Zambians. You know, some politicians are unable to do that. But can you imagine if President Lungu stands up there and said, listen, I thought I was doing the right thing, but under reflection now, I think that I misguided myself. I seek the forgiveness of the Zambian people. It's the best way to move on. You can't just insist I was right when everybody said that that's not the way to go.
Dr. Mumba, I want to ask you this. This election saw some bad things happen, violence. And you see some of the people who are perpetrating this violence are some people who go to kneel to our Father in church, to come to your sermons, to go to church and look at God, you know, and then tomorrow they're doing something totally, you know, different. I mean, how do you reconcile this?
Jesus dealt with it, that he could not really have confidence in man, because, and he said, do not put your confidence in the arm of flesh, because the heart of a man is desperately wicked. There is what is called in the Bible hypocrisy. The kind of Christianity that has been demonstrated over the past number of years in this country is the type of Christianity that is not based on a personal relationship with God. Most of it is for show. A lot of it is for political convenience, and I've been saying this for a long time. This is why I'm saying that if the believers, you know, begin to deceive themselves, that these politicians that are mentioning the name of God truly are mentioning the name of God in earnest, they are wasting their time. Because the Bible only says, you shall know them by their fruit. Not by their kneeling in a church, not by them singing a song. The Bible is very clear that don't be deceived by all that activity. The only way to know this one is a child of God is by their fruit, because the fruit is generic. It comes out of you naturally because that's who you are. If you're a mango tree, it's the mangoes that will come out. If you're a mulberry tree, it's mulberries that shall come out as fruit. So if you don't have fruit of justice, fruit of love, fruit of equitable attitude of distribution of goods and services to everyone regardless of their tribe or political affiliation, if you are selfish, if you are greedy, if you are vindictive, you cannot call yourself a Christian. You are a commercial Christian. And many believers, especially in the politics of our country, are commercial Christians. And the true Christians in our country are deceived to believe that those are Christians. So that would be my answer, that it's not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, that is really someone who belongs to the Lord.
Are some of the churches at risk of disappearing in this country?
Correct, yes, they are. I have been saying this for a long time. During the time of President Chiluba, 2001, when he was propagating the idea of a third term, the believers, like this time, divided themselves. Some of them believed that God had spoken to them that President Chiluba should go for a third term. And there is a number of pastors, and I hope they understand, 22 of them, that were well known to be advocating for the third term. And I said in one of my interviews, like I'm saying now, that once this problem is over and debacle of President Chiluba is over, those 22 pastors will have no ministries, most of them. If they'll have ministries, there'll be very limited ministries. I can count on one hand if there's any one of those 24 left legitimately impacting this nation with the gospel of Christ. I think there's none. And some of the names were big that time, but they are no longer on the table now. And I warn the church again that if you become an instrument of injustice, living off the envelope of a politician in order to propagate what you call your prophetic ministry. Once a cycle is over, you disappear with a cycle. And I say to the young preachers, remain resilient in your faith in God. Nevers Mumba can be your father in the Lord, but if Nevers Mumba goes astray, remain on the road and tell your brother, Nevers Mumba, that is going the wrong way. You are a prophetic voice. Nathan, a prophet to David, who was very close to David, but he revered David. When David went off course with Bathsheba, he did not fear the consequences of what David would do. He said, you are the man who is in trouble with God for what you've done. We don't have many believers with that quality, and we desperately need them. And I would like, as president, to have ministers of the gospel who can walk up into State House and say, Dr. Mumba, thus saith the Lord. Because by preserving me as president to stay on the line of justice and truth, you are preserving many lives across the country and giving them an opportunity to live a life of worth.
Let me ask you this. This particular president, President Hichilema, was incarcerated, detained 16 times. You've gone through similar troubles before, and not many churches stand up and say, look, what you're doing to this child of God is wrong. They don't condemn the government. Today, they're the first people to go to State House, to shower the president with praises. What should the president be wary of? How should the president react to this situation? Indeed, if you were president, how would you react to such a situation?
Again, the Bible says you shall know them by their fruit. I think that President Hichilema must be very careful. There are many presidents that have fallen at the hands of so-called Christian leaders. They are known that some of them are in this thing for money, and they have already started to knock at the door of State House. It's very unfortunate. I'm a minister of the gospel, and to deal with this is one of the most painful things, because I'm not supposed to be telling President Hichilema to be careful with the church. I am a church man. I should be telling him to get closer to the church people so that he can work with them in building this economy and our country. But unfortunately, in our midst as the church, there are detractors that have brought more harm to presidents and to this country in the name of God than those who have contributed to building a safer, more secure, and more honorable society. So because of that, I pray that President Hichilema creates a system in which he could verify the authenticity of these ministers of the gospel and look at their history and their contribution to the country. And if they belong to a group of ministers that mislead presidents, if I were him, I would not consult on them. I mean, I would not consult them in terms of where we should take the country. But look, I think the best way to deal with this is that I find that the church in Zambia is all over the place. We have not become the voice that can make a difference. And I think time has come for the church to, we are already divided in three groups. We have the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, we have the Catholic, we have also the CCZ, who have created this, trinity of leadership in this country. And I think that there's need for each one of these groups to now create a legitimacy and respect, so that when ECZ speaks, they speak on behalf of every member in the organization. When the Catholic, which is not a problem, I think they do, but the CCZ must also rein in their membership, so that when the church speaks, the government listens. If this could come to fruition, even the crying over the disappearance of the Ministry of National Guidance and Religious Affairs will no longer exist, because the three mother bodies, once they said no, whether it's a piece of legislation, whether it's a direction government has taken, it means the church everywhere stands up to do that. They can even say, We will not vote for this person in this coming election. We'll vote for this person. And believers will do that. Today, there's none of those three organizations can influence in totality or to a great extent how their members vote. Everyone is just voting, some of them according to tribe, some of them according to tribal affiliation, according to political affiliation. They are not basing it on morality or issues that are going to outlive us. So I think the church needs to reorganize itself. They need to have a mandate. They have to have the respect that when ECZ speaks, EFZ speaks, all the Pentecostal charismatic churches stand at attention to do that one thing. We are not there yet. And as long as we are not there yet, we'll be dealing with this that you are describing right now.
I'll be going back to talk about MMD later on, but since we've mentioned President Hichilema, you were one of the first people to call on him. What were you discussing? What are you telling him?
Frank, do you think? Look, first of all, let me put it this way. It was a courtesy call. He had just won the election. And we discussed matters of governance, which is not the first time. I must say that I was able to see him, one of the very first people to see him after he won. He was actually president-elect that time. Look, we have been in the opposition with HH for a long time. President HH. I have to now learn that he's no longer just my colleague now. He's the Republican president. And I have to give that to him now. So we've been in the opposition together, interacted a lot on social issues that concern us, bother us. We have been punished equally. In, you know, when he's in Mukobeko, I'm in Mwembeshi maximum prison. When he's somewhere, I'm also in Chimbokaila. So we shared those concerns on how do we move this country beyond this type of politics. And I thought that him becoming president created a little crisis for me because you know, what he believes in, the fundamentals, I believe in those issues. Right. You know, issues of order and the rule of law. It's very strong to me. And that's what I was talking about during the campaign. Because if we have no order in this country, there's no development that can come. The reason why Europe and the United States are ahead of us is because their systems are orderly. You can go to a police station, report a case, before long they'll be dealing with it. But here you go and report, they want money from you. It's all messed up. You go to the streets, you want to walk along the streets, the shops, people are selling everything on the streets. There's no order, no payment of taxes, and therefore only a few people pay taxes. So when he talks about order, he touches my heart. But not only did he talk about order, he talked about corruption and the fight against corruption. And you remember that President Levi Mwanawasa and myself and the other people, this was really our mantra, that if we don't deal with corruption, we are going to be working for absolutely nothing, because we'll put in water in a basket and it goes out. So I was impressed even with his speech in Parliament when he dealt with corruption, because he did not just say we are going to fight corruption. He actually dressed up this fight against corruption, that we're going to have a fast-track court process to deal with the criminals that are involved in this. And if we catch one in corruption, what the kind of punishment given to them by the courts must be, you know, scary enough that people do not want to go in that direction. He also created other things around that. So the things he talked about were very close to me. And therefore, we have been talking for a long time on these matters. And people don't know that, because they think because we're in opposition, you know, we're just rivals. But like I said in the beginning, 2016, we campaigned together, exchanged a lot of notes on a lot of things. And therefore, when people say, Nevers have been accused the past 2 weeks, that I'm not hitting hard enough on HH, you know, as an opposition leader, there's time for everything, Frank. There's really time for everything. First of all, he's becoming president for the first time. There are what we call teething challenges. If he does something that contradicts the very values of this country, or it will injure the prospects of a prospered country, I will speak out. He knows that. But so far, he has sent the right signals. He has sent the right signals that have evoked hope in the hearts of the Zambian people. My job first of all, as a patriot in this country, is not just my political career, because there's a belief in this country that the more you insult the president, the more popular you become, and the greater chances you have of being the next president. The problem with that is that you end up with a president who is worth nothing except being a critic, and we've had that before. And Zambians must move beyond that type of politics. And I think where we are now is to observe our colleagues. You know, when he speaks, hopes are raised. Rule of law, who doesn't want that? Even MMD is going to benefit from that, because at the end of the day, our biggest problem was that the Patriotic Front were supporting rebels to rise up against our party every day with huge sums of money. Just like a rebel group has been disabled. Therefore, that country has an opportunity now to focus on development and things that concern them. So I think I will say something if they go off. Right. But at this time, President Hakainde knows he has my support as long as he remains on this trajectory of hope, which is given to the Zambian people. So I think that it will be irregular for me and hypocritical for me to now have just an opposing thing going. I said yesterday, and I'll repeat this, that the fight against corruption by the president and the UPND is taking a dangerous turn. Right. UPND is too slow to deal with this vice. We dealt with it as MMD under Lev Manawasa. The whole issue of succeeding is speed, because
3 weeks, dog.
Speed must, speed must be, speed must at the beginning. You don't fight corruption at the end. You fight corruption at the beginning. Clamp it down so that documentation is not lost, evidence is not destroyed, monies are not moved. You gotta clamp it down. Some of it you'll be wrong, but you clamp it down so that you have time to ensure that nobody runs away or nobody destroys the evidence, because in the absence of evidence you cannot prosecute. So I am saying that the SEC and DEC, they need absolutely no extra word from President Hichilema. He has already said it. Swing into action. Do not wait for me. It is your job to do that. And I am concerned that this, because, Frank, listen, corrupt people are baxed. They have money. Nothing stops them from buying prosecutors, buying customs officers, hiring jets to put their money in there and fly to Congo. Nothing stops them. So you cannot wait for them to get their act together. It's a surprise kind of operation. Surprise them while they're trying to think, then make sure you recover what belongs to the Zambian people. I'm concerned about the way this fight against corruption is going. We could lose it in the beginning. Of course, we will be able to rein in some people as we go forward, but I think that it is important to be quick in dealing with this vice.
Related to that, it's been given a massive national mandate. At the same time, an expectant nation. Is this a plus for him and his government, or it's a major challenge?
It's both. It's a big plus for President Hakainde Hichilema because he has a mandate like never known before. It's a huge mandate. Of course, we had it in 1991. But he has this mandate that gives him the opportunity to do the right thing. But the downside to that, which I see now, is that Zambians have proved to be a little bit impatient now. You know, it's like buying a little toy for your son. And he wants to play with it all the time. Anytime he presses the button, it overturns, and he gets so excited about the fact that when he presses a button, something happens. Zambians in this election have found out how much power they have. President Chiluba said power is sweet as a president.
Right.
Now the Zambians are saying power is sweet for themselves because they decided PF is out and we're going to get somebody else in there. And they use their power to make that change. They want to use that power tomorrow. They want to use it again because all of a sudden they are used to having this power now and they know that it can always produce results. So because of that, not only President Hichilema should be careful, but all of us politicians must be careful with this newfound power in the hands of the Zambian people. Now, my advice that I would give, and I've continued to give to the UPND, and as opposition, I shouldn't probably be giving this, but like I've said, I am supporting my colleague in the many pronouncements that he has made.
Yeah.
There are promises, Frank, that were made when we were in the opposition. And Zambians have been listing those that have been made by the UPND. I have advanced the advice that the UPND needs to find voices or a voice of a spokesperson that can speak to those promises and on a consistent basis and explain that we promise that you have this over 2 weeks, but looking at what we have found, it may take 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Zambians stand with us. They should not make the mistake that PF made. PF said within 90 days, you have money in your pockets. Within 90 days.
Constitution will be done.
Yeah. So those things, although the PF thought Zambians forgave them because they stopped talking about it, they lost their credibility after 90 days. Because all of a sudden they realized this was a hoax. It was not true. So I think that the UPND is walking on a very tight rope. The expectations of the Zambian people are wild, and rightly so. It's been 10 years of exhaustion, political exhaustion, financial exhaustion, social exhaustion. There was no space to breathe except to a PF. The cadres ran the show. The police were powerless. It was an unjust society. So I think for me, my advice would be, they need to begin to speak to the Zambian people. We promised this. You notice they're talking about the jet now?
Yeah.
And what I'm asking this government to do is to face the camera and say, listen, this is what we said. We have found this technicality. But I can tell you, we are working through this process. And once we finalize it, we'll do the following. Let the Zambians judge you on what you have said. But if you keep quiet, then this whole thing will begin to swell against the UPND because Zambians don't want to be lied to. And I think one of the things President Levi Mwanawasa said to me when he made me vice president, he said, we have told these people we're going to do a lot of things for them. I want you on television every week, he told me, and tell the Zambian people what government is doing in fulfilling those obligations and promises. Of course, when I proposed that we change it, we formed the government forum. And I told him I would only come in once per month. And the ministers were now part of the government forum every week. They came in live in the morning as NBC to explain what they are doing in the ministries. The reason that communication is important is because you calm the people down. Okay, you have not given us the eggs you promised us after 1 week, but at least you have told us in 2 weeks the eggs are coming. And I think this is the biggest danger that stands in front of the UPND. The levels of expectation is high.
Let me ask you this, the other key issue that was prominent during these elections, the role the youths played. I'll be coming to that very shortly, but I don't want to lose my track on corruption. Let's assume the investigations are done thoroughly, and some of them are leading to the man who was at the top, the president himself, the former president. And then Parliament says, look, we're going to lift the immunity. Is that something that you would subscribe to?
When the issue of the immunity of President Chiluba came up under the Levi Mwanawasa administration, to which I belonged, we had to interrogate this matter. President Lev Mwanawasa was a lawyer. I remember him sitting with me in his small office, and he said, you know, Pastor, I speak to you now as a pastor. The Constitution was never made that us presidents can commit criminal offenses under the guise of immunity. That was not the intention. The intention was that because of being president, in the name of the security of the nation, sometimes a president would make decisions that are outside the Constitution in order to defend and protect the nation and the security of the country. And for those, he should not be, you know, judged or, punished because he was doing it in the interest of the nation. Immunity is not there to protect criminality. That was the issue we had to deal with. And we came to a non-conclusion that basically immunity should not be a shield for criminality. So I think that it is in the interest of even President Lungu, if it comes to that, for him to defend himself so that he lives the rest of his life free from those accusations. I think we should not only look at it from the negative point of view. I think that the immunity should be removed if there are cases that are pointing to him so that he can clear his name. It has been done before. And I think that that is something we must look at. Criminality is not part of the presidency and the protection of the presidency. Two, there was a rumor that was going around, and I hope it is not true, when they said that, you know, President Rupia Banda brought President Hichilema when he won and President Lungu together in order to promise him that he would not be prosecuted. You know, we don't have the full text of that discussion, but I doubt that President Hichilema would have committed to that kind of situation because it's not in his power. Even if there was money stolen, it's not President Hichilema's money. If things will be so, he can ensure that there is true justice and respect in the manner in which this process is going. But he cannot change the course of justice. I think that, I hope what was discussed in that meeting was just to say, let's be brothers. Let's allow the rule of law not to be used against you as a former president because of vindictiveness. But I hope that nothing like that was agreed there, because we'll be paralyzing the course of justice in this country. Look, I am saying this, I have a lot of respect for all my leaders, you know, President Lungu, President Arabi. These are statesmen that have done their part. Their legacy will follow them. It's not up to me to keep talking. But if they broke the law at any point, none of us is above the law. And I think that, to answer your question, if there's any need or any reason for the investigative wings to ask President Lungu some questions, the reason why the immunity has a provision to be lifted in Parliament is precisely to serve that constitutional role. And they will be within the Constitution to do that. What I am against is vindictiveness, because President Lungu is still a Zambian. He's entitled to the freedoms of this country. He's entitled to be judged soberly and not to be worked against just because of what he did. I think all of us deserve to be given, you know, equitable justice.
Still on corruption, Dr. Mumba, I mean, some of the monies, the figures, the numbers that are being mentioned are beyond imagination. If you sat back and said, wait a minute, what is going on here?
Look, I want to say this way. The fall of the Patriotic Front is based on 3 words. Incompetence, then greed, and then arrogance. These 3 brought down the Patriotic Front. Let me start with incompetence. Never in the history of our country have we ever seen a president who was put in cabinet or in government pivotal positions and qualified people as the last PF administration. These are people who are unexposed, people uneducated, people that really are not even well versed in travel. They are people that have very humble backgrounds in terms of exposure. So that kind of team that you put together of incompetent people Not all of them. There were some real brilliant people that he chose, but on average, it was these people that just he picked from everywhere because they were good cadres and made them ministers. There's a price to that. The price to that is that these people cannot be anything but greedy when they see money for the first time in their lives. That's why, as a preacher, sometimes I preach the message, can you stand to be blessed? There are certain people that have never seen so many opportunities on one table. And because of their background, they want to grab everything. Yeah. You know, Frank, you know, we grew up in the village. Yeah. You are looking sharp now, trying to give the impression that you grew up in Lusaka. No, Frank, we grew up in Chinsali. Here is the truth. Yeah. Whenever we traveled to Lusaka and found bread, butter, fiti, patebo, breakfast, party time, because I don't see that where I come from. Yeah. This is what happened with PF. They saw money on the table they had never seen. That's why you sell them with money on TV, you know, sleeping on money. It was a circus. For the first time in this country, we give people that had no understanding of the economy. And now, because of that, they become greedy. And I've never seen in the history of this country how quickly people started to build houses and vehicles at their houses. How do you do that? And now you go to the houses, the mansions within 5 years. Yeah. So this is greed. The last one is arrogance. Yeah. Because now they have money which they have stolen or accumulated using unusual means. Now arrogance comes in because they are not prepared. They are not cultured. They are not ready for that office. They were brought in as weak new people. Now arrogance. That's why they could, in the campaign, they will sing songs like Adebo Edelapo. Who campaigns with a song like that? You're supposed to plead for a vote from the people, but it was arrogance. Mwina wakasaka. And then they will also say, sorry, but lesali salakale. So what kind of arrogance is that? These guys really are living in an alternative world. So it is because, but if you contrast that with President Chiluba's cabinet, President Chiluba had a very humble educational background. He only got his degree while in State House. Okay, so, but he knew that in order to succeed, he had to be brave enough to get intelligent people, educated people, self-made people. The Mulembas, then you have the Penzas, you have the Din Mungombas, people with degrees, people who after winners. These were self-made people, and Chiluba was the least educated amongst them. But he knew to run an economy and a government, you cannot be a cadre to use cadres. So I think for me, to answer your question, Frank, I think that the biggest problem that PF had was that they depended on these people, and therefore they, sorry for using the word, they took big. Or is it still big? Because they didn't know when else that opportunity was going to come. But again, I cannot be the one to make that judgment. The courts exist to be able to prove that. We'll be going on a break very shortly, and then we come back and talk about MMD for 10 minutes or so. But before we do that, I did mention the one critical component of society in this election were the youths. This is a time bomb. How does this government, you know, give a lovely carrot to the youths, a plant, so that they can start germinating, so that they can finally start flourishing? I think that they have to address themselves to two groups of youth. First of all, the existing youth group that exists today. Some of it is on the streets, some of it is moving around the town with degrees and diplomas in their hands. They don't know where to take them, and they have now to start to prepare the next group, which is the coming up youth group, by ensuring that the education they give to them. They lock it in with areas of engagement in terms of progressive jobs, or for them to create opportunities for them to start their own small businesses and empower them to be able to do that. But this group, which is already existing, is the most volatile one, because this one has already been, sorry to use the word, influenced by negative forces. Some of them don't want to work. Some of them are just, they want to get from others. Some of them want to steal. So they need to now concentrate on a program that is going to answer this big problem of the youth, because these youths that voted in the last election, they are going to be with us for a very long time to come. They will be a factor in many elections. So you need to deal with them consciously. You remove them from the bus station. You remove them from the markets. Sit with them now, guys. That was not how you develop yourself. Here is the program on which I want you to have value brought back to your life, so that you can have your own home, your own wife, and your own family. The only way you can do this is, let's do this together. Get your skills education. Those of you that need to go back to school, we're going to make sure we work with you, because you need to feel good about yourself in order to work for yourself. It's a program that must start now.
Okay. Two very quick questions before you go on a break, and I want you to answer them very quickly. Parliament is critical, in governance, especially in this government. There are petitions going on, and although the party has got a very comfortable numbers to work with in Parliament, I want you to quickly comment on that. And also we'll close this half with ECZ. And I mean, there are teams in a league, but it takes a managers to manage all this process. What is your take on how ECZ managed and the lessons going forward?
So let me start with Parliament, then I'll come with ECZ. I think Parliament stands in a very good place in terms of the fact that, yes, the UPND can make certain changes on the ordinary bills, but the big things they can do where they need a two-thirds majority, and they have to call, even if they brought in the independence, which I don't think they can marshal all the time, they still would not get that two-thirds, which is a good thing for Zambia, because then it removes the possibility of arrogance in a government. It also makes them depend on others and negotiate and try to make sense on why they want to make that change. So I think that is there. Concerning the petitions, you really cannot stop that. It's a constitutional provision. I just wanted to put something out there that I read before I came here, that the Patriotic Front were complaining that this is irresponsible for UPND to petition so many. They are thinking that there are about 300 petitions if you include all the levels of campaign, that is members of parliament, mayors, and councillors. Now, they are forgetting, and I think the PF must be a little bit more moral than they're being now. When we lost as MMD in 2011, we had 55 members of parliament. 53 of those seats were petitioned by the Patriotic Front. When I became president of MMD, I spent almost all of my time trying to defend these seats and find money which we didn't have as an opposition party now to try to keep some of those seats. And we won some of the seats, but we lost many as well. And so PF cannot have a moral voice to challenge the UPND on what they have done. The Bible makes it clear, you reap what you sow. It's the same thing I saw when they were complaining about ZNBC, that they're being stopped. Some things you should not even say it as PF. Just leave it. Maybe let it come 10 months from now. That now becomes immorality. You did the same thing, now you don't want your friends for you to eat, to sleep in the bed that you made yourself. So, and I'm not saying it's right for them to do that, but let us, the others, speak, not you. You have no moral right to say that, because you were doing that to all of us just yesterday. Coming to the ECZ, I think ECZ must be retired in its current form. And it's not only for Zambia, it's a problem for the rest of the continent of Africa. They must be retired. They are not going to interpret the current type of politics that we want now. The type of politics they were handling was the type of politics where they were on the side of the ruling party, so obviously and so visibly that nothing really was expected out of them. So, one of the reasons they were so weakened, and I said this before, the greatest danger to the security of any African nation are the electoral commissions on the continent. Because, you know, the first thing you want is electoral justice. You may lose the election like I lost, but I would like to lose knowing that I lost justly, not because they concocted it. I went into this election in dispute against the ECZ because we told them to do just one little thing: bring PF to the table and tell them to stop going around the country using ZNBC that MMD and PF were in an alliance and MMD was supporting Lungu. They were taking that message everywhere. We had no power to counter that voice. We asked ECZ to level the playing field. Because it was the ruling party, they just shunted us on the side. We are not the only ones. There are many others that face that. The other problem that the last ECZ had was that the manner in which the commissioners were appointed. The president does all that. These people, their hands are tied. They have to do what the president wants. The second problem that they had was the limited mandate they had. If they find that one party is really playing around with the rules, they needed to have power to immediately adjudicate and, you know, remove that political party from the rest. Summarily, that would have sent a strong message that violence would have reduced. Distribution of money to the cadres would have reduced, but they couldn't do any of that because of their limited mandate. But mostly the way they appointed to office had a lot to do with their weakness to perform their jobs. They must be retired. We must now put in place an independent electoral commission whose appointment is with the support of all stakeholders, away from the president and away from one group, but where all stakeholders can feel comfortable that we are represented in that team.
This is Frank on Camnet on a Tuesday. I'm speaking to Dr. Neves Mumba, president of New Hope MMD, post 2021 election. When we come back, we just spend 10 minutes on one or two questions. Join us very shortly.
Camnet TV turns 5. We are excited to be the best community Christian TV channel within Zambia and across the world. With our programming for all age groups, talk of sermons, movies, kids programs, music, talk shows, developmental programs, and our unbiased, factual, and balanced news. To you, our viewers, we are saying thank you for being part of this journey. Happy 5th anniversary. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
Africa is rising to a new dawn of integrity and accountability. Are you tired of being swindled or buying fake or illegal properties? Would you like to sell or buy genuine property? Would you like to list your property on both local and international market? Don't waste your time. Call the professionals, the SGK Properties, on +260 762 166 018. SGK Properties. Your business assurance is our priority.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions, I think just rolled into one. What happens to, now let me rephrase it. Where is MMD coming from? Where was it during the elections? Where is it now? And where is it going? And you're all included in this.
Wow, thank you so much, Frank. First of all, the story of the movement for multi-party democracy is a very known story to those who mean well. The challenges of MMD, without going too far back, can be traced back to 2001 when we had the issue of the third term. I think that was one of the lowest dips of our party in its losing the support from amongst the Zambian people. You notice that in the results, that President Mwanawasa, who was gotten from outside, and if we didn't get a candidate from outside the establishment of the party, I don't think we would have won the 2001 election. But President Chuluba and the party decided to go and get Levi Mwanawasa, who was totally untouched by all these issues of corruption and fight for the third term. And he won only by 2% over Anderson Mazoka. There's a feeling that that election probably could have been lost. But let's keep it the way it is, that he won only with 2%. Now that is a time when MMD really started to go down, because when he formed government, some people were calling it a government made simple, but it was because it was really, in the eyes of Zambians, a bit discredited because of the third term fight. And then Mwanawasa tried to give it some legitimacy. And the reason why MMD even rose is because Mwanawasa concentrated on rebuilding the economy. And he did an excellent job of it. So because of that, the credibility of MMD began to come back, to the extent that even when he was unwell, he still won the second term. He didn't campaign because he was unwell, but he still won because of the legacy that he had created around himself as an individual. So then it was handed over to President Rupia Banda. After he died, you notice that President Rupia Banda won, when 3 years later, President Rupia Banda could not sustain the victory. We lost in 2011. That was another dip for MMD, because all of a sudden people turned their backs against the party, and they needed a new leader to come in and give it some life. The only problem with the new leader is that he had now to navigate it through the opposition waters. You see, when you are in power and you are weak as a party, you can still survive because the instruments of government hold you. When we went into the opposition, I had to ask myself a question: do I contest the presidency of this party? Because when they were in power, I didn't have the opportunity. And they told me, somebody told me, I can mention their name, they said, Nevers, you have to make a decision. If you take it in opposition, whatever mess that is on this party, whatever things Zambians don't like about this party, they'll put it on you and they'll blame you for it. And you have to make sure that either MMD follows you, but if you follow MMD, it can sink you, because people in MMD have never been in opposition. They don't know the pain of opposition. And you have to carry that pain and conflict with you until you get them to the other side. So when we finally made up, and it was the youth who came and insisted that I stand, they felt that they were going to work with me. And that's how we came out, and I won because they needed a new face, a new voice, new vigor and energy. And that's how we won that election. But when President Sata died, we had a crisis in the party. That's when President Rupia Banda wanted to come back to the party. And when he did that, the party was split into 3 immediately. It's a story all of us know. So it was weakened 3 times more. And I had to work hard to bring it back up by 2016, threw in a lot of money, a lot of my hours, a lot of energy, together with our team. I worked with an incredible National Executive Committee, resilient, determined, and committed. 2016, we brought it back. But again, they came back, the same people, and created a parallel MMD, and also used the instruments of PF power to deregister us from the register of societies and gave the party to another group of their choice. That was the problem in 2016. I couldn't even stand as president because at the register of societies, my name did not appear. We went to court. 3.5 years later, we won the case. But at that time, the damage had already been made. We had 18 months to go through the country to see the state of our structures, to mobilize, and then thirdly, to try to plan for an election. When the election came, and I announced that I'm getting into this election, as an amputated person on one leg. But we have to continue doing this, because the reason why organizations are formed is to ensure that you participate in the electoral process and move forward and assess yourselves so that you can plan better. So obviously the result that came on 12th of August was well known to us. We knew the damage that had been done to us by PF announcing that we were supporting Edgar Lungu, and all the lies that were told, and also the fact that we were coming out of a 3-year court case while our friends were caught. So I am fully aware of the challenges I've passed through, and that is why I do not take my losses or the small numbers I got as a pain, but they are an indicator of a process that we've gone through. Where are we going from here? I made a statement that offended some of the people who call themselves former members of our party. I said, in our current form as MMD, we cannot make any difference on the political platform of this country. We only have one option. The option we have is to be brutal enough and change everything that must be changed about this political party. At least for the first time, those distractors who were being supported by PF are no more. Because if they try to distract us, they'll go to jail. So we think we have an opportunity to reorganize ourselves, and that's why I appointed a committee led by our Vice President Sambo, and they finished their work on Monday, presented their report to me. I'm going through it, and I'll present it to the National Executive Committee within the next 10 days. After that, we are going to tell the nation how we are going to proceed. The only thing I can promise is that the changes we're going to make will be defining, and they will be radical enough to give Zambians the understanding that we are no longer interested in the old behavior of the old MMD. Now we would like to join the company of political parties that are trying to contribute to making Zambia better. Where, Frank, I will be judged on my capacity to lead, not on the state of the vehicle that I'm using. So that's where we are.
What is your family saying in all this? Your beautiful wife and the children, the grandchildren?
My family has been consulted, and I continue to do that. They believe that in terms of the vision that God has given me for this country, I must continue to pursue it. But whatever decision I'll make in reorganizing how I approach the next election, they believe that, according to them, I hear God enough to make that decision. I think what is important to me is that the first battle of legal reorganization, fights and all that define what kind of a leader I am, has been won and it's finished. Now what is left is the political path. How do we now get to deliver on going where we are going?
Before we end the budget, and I was speaking to the Minister of Finance today, the budget will be delayed a little bit, but not too long. When the budget is enough, what are you looking for in the budget? I know it's a difficult time, you know, to have a budget that is going to please everybody.
But I just think, because of time, I want to say that it's a very challenging thing when you change government, because the budget was already conceived prior to this government coming. But I think they must take into consideration the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated lives of Zambian people. People that can work for themselves, people that can contribute to the GDP of this country. Against their will, whatever they were doing has been affected and shattered. A lot of small businesses are now hanging on debt they cannot pay because of what has happened over the past 2 years. So this budget must have an element in it that tries to lift up these who have fallen through the cracks because of COVID-19. They couldn't work, they shut down their shops, they shut down their businesses, they shut down their operations for months on end. Now they're trying to get started. They were paying workers when they were not making money. They were paying taxes when they were not making money. I think government must be intricate enough to deal with this tax issue so that they don't kill these small businesses, because the taxation that does not think with the owners of the businesses is dangerous. For instance, they come to your business, Frank, and say, according to us, you are supposed to pay so much tax. Give it to us. He said, no, but I have not been paid yet. But they still want you to give them the money, although you have not been paid, sometimes by government itself. So they are paralyzing small businesses upon whose shoulders we can build the economy. I say to the Minister of Finance, let's be realistic in preserving the small-scale, medium-scale businesses and make sure that the incentives that are needed in the mining sector are realistic. And we did that when we were in government. We gave realistic but very attractive incentives that, you know, investors came in their numbers to help us, you know, resuscitate our economy. I asked them to consider the devastation that COVID-19 has made or done as you do that budget, so that your support can go in supporting the Zambian small-scale, medium-scale businesses, so that their businesses can start to rise and have a chance in the economy.
Finally, how much hopeful are you about this country that's part of the equation? Has the morally upright season started as a result of what happened during these elections and the third part of the equation? What are you talking to God about now?
Well, first of all, let me talk about has the moral side of the story started. I think when you interpret morality in terms of equity, justice, rule of law, these are decisions that put the nation back on track. The reason we were not making progress is because we were basking in confusion and a lack of desire for order. Because if order had come, there would have been less corruption. So the last administration did not care about order. So this government talking about order, in my view, they're interpreting morality and integrity. So to that degree, I agree, which makes me answer your other question. Do I have hope for my country? I have great hope for my nation. I have great hope because as presidents and political parties that come into power, we are just bricks in the process of building. Today is President Hakainde Hichilema. Tomorrow, it will be somebody else. And prayerfully, could be Nevas Mumba. Yesterday, it was President Lungu. We are all blocks trying to build something, but you build faster on systems that are outlined and serving everybody, not just a small group. You asked the last question. I'm trying to...
What are you talking to God about now?
What am I talking to God about? I'm talking to God about many things. I'm talking to God about, first of all, I'm thanking Him for how He has preserved me. You know, under normal circumstances, people who go through what I go through will have a lot of high blood pressure, you know, all these sicknesses that come with it. But every morning I wake up, I'm joyful, I'm strong, my family is fine, my 5 children are happy, my grandchildren are happy, my wife is okay, I've got a roof over my head, I've got food on the table, I'm supporting I don't know how many families in different places they are working. I am happy that God has looked after me, but I continue to pray that may He make Zambia the #1 country on the continent.
Let me ask you one of these questions. You know, it's not easy. When one was vice president and then you leave the position, when one was president, it's even worse, like President Lungu now. What do you think is going through him right now, and what advice would you give him? I'm sure phones have reduced in terms of ringing, friends have reduced.
It's scary, Frank. It's scary. When I was removed and fired from the vice presidency, the phone did not stop ringing the following day. It stopped immediately. For the whole day. So I asked my wife to call my number because I thought there was something wrong with my phone. So I said, Florence, can you call my number? And she called it and it rang. So it happens almost immediately. And of course, later on in life, as you interact, people start to call you again. So I can imagine what President Lungu is going through. And that is why I'm saying that even in our harshness of trying to get after his case, let our harshness only be to the extent of where he broke the law, not vindictiveness. It's harsh enough, You know, that position makes you, you are talking, people want to see you all the time. Then they stop. It does something to you. All I can say to President Lungu is that this is a moment of reflection and thanking God, first of all, that he gave you the opportunity to preside over such a great people. Just thank him. There are 18 million Zambians, and he chose you to be a leader in this country. That in itself should give you some Thanksgiving sessions in your home. And then at some point, if you really feel you want the freedom, come out to the Zambian people and thank them and ask them to forgive you where you could have gone wrong. That word alone will liberate you and to be able to reintegrate in the life of our country. But do not have pity parties. God has been good to you. He's been kind to you. You are still healthy. You left the presidency alive. And I think, like I did, I discovered that God made me a vice president at 43 years old. One of the youngest, in fact, the youngest vice president. And I just thought that, one of the youngest vice presidents, and I just decided to shift my pen to praise. And started to praise God. I said, Lord, I didn't even know that I would ever be vice president, and you gave it to me. There are many other Zambians that you could have used. So if the President Lungu goes in that direction, he will recover quicker and let him reintegrate in society. Life does not end with the presidency. There's more now that you can do. You can do a lot of good for Zambia, a lot of good for Zambian people. But presidency was never meant that we become presidents forever until we die. These are jobs we do on behalf of God and behalf of the Zambian people. When our time comes, we move out and others continue.
Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed by this longest serving media guy at 69 and over 50 years in the media. But the most amazing thing is this guy is a very proud son of a reverend.
Well, I know that. Because I wish you could have preached as well, because you would have preached like your dad.
My mom wanted me to do that.
And then you ran away.
No, I told my mom I actually preached to a big congregation. When I'm on radio and TV, I preach to millions. My father, the husband to my mom, was preaching to about 200 or 300 people.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right.
Always an honor.
Thank you so much.
And God bless you.
God bless you too.
This has been Frank on Camnet. I've been talking to Dr. Nevis Mumba, President, New Hope, MMD, post-2021 elections. I'll tell you what, God planted you here, and he planted you for a reason, to be part of this amazing field called Zambia. Do your part. Like I keep on saying, do everything. Do everything possible. Okay? Do everything, and I mean everything in your right. Okay? Perform to your highest, and God will do the rest. Thank you to the crew at Camnet, Isaac and his team, and Pastor Chiluba and Mrs. Chiluba, the executive producers. God bless you. God bless Zambia. Good night.